Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome a very senior professional from the world of communication from California, USA, Mr. Don Weber. Don, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for a wonderful introduction.
Thank you.
Ashutosh. I really
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Don is a global communication strategist and a former HUMINT operative. So, Don, my first question for you, tell me a little bit about your own journey and how did your years in human intelligence fundamentally change the way you read people and situations under pressure?
Great question. I would say there's a few parts to that. When I got into that sort of work, I had sort of a natural aptitude for manipulating people. And that's actually why I was chosen for that type of work. In fact, as I mentioned earlier, I've been in India and you have a great organization there called RAW.
Yeah.
That's very effective at their work, actually. They're not very well known, but they're very good at what they do. So I had a kind of an aptitude for that. So I put those skills to work, you could say, basically. And I went evolving as I got older, more experience, saw a lot of things that most people, not just saw a lot of things that most people don't see, but had a lot of experiences that most people don't have a chance to have, or probably a lot of those experiences they don't want to have, actually. It changed my perception on life, on living, completely. One of the big things I learned on this was if you make the center of your life something that's artificial, what happens if you lose that something? I'll give you an example. Some people, the most important thing in their life is maybe money. But what happens if you lose all that money? Who are you now?
Yeah.
Or what happens if the center of your life is your wife? And God forbid, maybe she passes. You've got a big problem now, right? Or even worse, I've seen this one. I'm the CEO of XYZ huge corporation, and suddenly now it's time for me to retire or step down.
Yeah.
And the person becomes the title, and they're no longer a person. So without that title, they're no longer a person. And that's a big adjustment for some people, especially when their egos are overly inflated. And I'm sure in your work, you ran into people with that kind of thing. So I kind of evolved over a period of time. In reading people, I was good at it before because it was survival. So I watched little details, very observant, all that kind of thing. And I had a natural aptitude for manipulation. Then you had some training on that. And that's kind of a dangerous combination.
Fascinating. And tell me, Don, what misconceptions do the senior leaders have about influence that intelligence work quickly corrects?
Repeat the question again. Sorry.
What misconceptions do or can senior leaders have about influence that intelligence work can quickly correct?
Well, I think one of the big things is when we want to influence somebody, the fancy title is great, but that in itself is not influence.
Yeah.
It's having a connection with the other person. If I have let's say a foreign individual from a foreign government, and I wanted them to become friends with me, we'll say it that way. There's a human element. I need to be able to connect with that person at some level, and it needs to be genuine, or at least I need to believe that it's genuine, which is another story that I won't get into now.
Yeah.
So as a leader, as a senior leader, manager, you need to really care about people. You need to have a genuine interest in other people, a curiosity about people in a healthy way, of course. Dale Carnegie used to say, be curious about other people, but it should be genuine from within, where you really are interested in the person, and it's just not a show.
Correct.
I think that would be a simplified explanation.
Well, and also tell me, what does executive presence actually mean at a board or at an investor level beyond confidence and polish?
Okay. You see, let's say a lot of politicians, they have the polish, they have the way to speak, the words and all that, but there's a lack of authenticity to it. Right? I would summarize executive presence in just a few words. I say it's basically a problem comes up, an issue comes up, and it's, don't worry, I got this handled. And the person, they have enough aptitude and enough experience that they know how to get the problem handled. Maybe they have the solution themselves, or they know where to go to get the solution, but they resonate that confidence that things are going to be okay. I think that's a big part of executive presence. obviously everybody's human. People get stressed, they frustration, long hours, these kinds of unexpected problems, and those all can come up. But I think it's really the emitting that energy that, hey, whatever comes up, I can handle this. Don't worry about it. Trust me. And it being real, being genuine again.
Yeah. Well said. What communication shifts must founders make as they move from early stage to a scaled CEO?
It's really big. Communication is a major element of it, because when you have a small company, I'm actually working with a client right now. They've built a very, very successful business, but they're at the problem. The problem now is they can't scale anymore. They can't grow because you have two people running the company, an operations officer, their family, and the founder, right? Who handles all the sales and stuff, and they're fantastic at it. But they're hemorrhaging money significantly because they're afraid to delegate. They're afraid to do this. They're afraid to do that. And they need to bring in proper talent to help them. And a big element of that is knowing how to delegate, knowing how to communicate, being able to trust people, and a series of other things that people need to be able to do as leaders. And that's a great case study of that. And you see that all the time with entrepreneurs and founders. Are brilliant. They've got a great thing. They're able to build this business, but they hit this level, this plateau, and they can't grow anymore. And then unless they change the way they're doing things, they're not going to be able to scale.
And therefore, a follow-up question for you, Don, is why do some founders struggle the most after they achieve success or they raise significant capital?
I think what happens is sometimes we have a self-image of ourselves. So maybe we don't see ourselves as a multimillionaire or multi-billionaire, and it's uncomfortable. I'm going to give you a breakdown, real simple example. Think of somebody who's significantly overweight. They lose the weight, but they haven't changed their self-image in their mind. So they still see themselves as an obese person. Their natural tendency will be to put on the weight again. That's their natural, because that's the way they see themselves. If you have a founder or entrepreneur who's not used to having great success, having maybe a certain level of recognition or a lot of capital, whatever, it may be uncomfortable. It may take an adjustment to adjust into that new role.
Very interesting. I love your perspectives. As you said, you observe people well, and it's amazing perceptions you're giving me. My next question, Don, is how should founders change how they listen once they have a board and institutional investors?
Well, my favorite one is we have 2 ears, right? And you know what I'm going to say. And we have one mouth. So what does that mean? We should listen twice as much as we speak.
Yes.
The people with the greatest influence, you'll notice, are the ones that speak the less. They speak the least. I'm sorry. They'll be sitting at a table. They say very little, but man, when they open their mouth and you begin to say something, everybody. And the other person on the other spectrum is the one that's going blah 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 all the time. The words maybe are less valuable. You know what I'm saying? So it has a lot to do with perception. Doesn't mean just because somebody's quiet means they're intelligent and they're genius or whatever. But definitely, it can change the way people perceive you.
And what are some of the common behaviors that quietly erode trust with boards and investors?
Well, not doing what you say you're going to do.
Correct.
Right. Not being prepared. Not having really done your due diligence. So if we have a new marketing plan or we have a new strategy that we're going to market and haven't really thought through everything that could happen. Obviously, it's impossible maybe to foresee everything, but at least having stops in there and you're having a plan B. So if the most likely scenario is A, but there's a strong likelihood we could have B or C as an outcome. And having stops in place, and what are we going to do if B happens or C happens? Or how can we take maybe that loss or that unfortunate strategy that didn't work out and turn it into a win? Having some idea. So what do we do if this happens? What are our alternatives? And the same, it ties into the intelligence stuff. You go into a situation, you need to have a plan A, plan B, plan C, maybe even a plan D and E, who knows, but what the situation is, but you need to, and figure out ahead of time, if this happens, this is how I'm going to react. If this happens, this is what we're going to do.
And do you have an example that you can share with us without any names, of course, on what you just explained to us?
Well, let me see. Yes. One of them had to do with a large counterfeiting operation. Okay. And we knew who they were, what they were doing, and all that kind of thing. So the problem is we had to be able to prove it. I wasn't law enforcement, but we had to prove it to another government that this was in a reality happening. We can't, back in that time, we didn't have smartphones. Technology wasn't quite so advanced. So it was a bit difficult and dodgy, in fact, dangerous to walk in with a wire, because this kind of stuff wasn't happening in Europe or the USA usually. It was happening in Africa or countries where if you got caught, you'd probably get shot. That was that. So being able to come up with the proof that we could prove that what was happening. And saying, okay, well, how do I prove that these people, in fact, do have a manufacturing facility that's very top-notch, very professional? They've invested hundreds of thousands of US dollars in equipment to be able to print high-quality bills, right? Because just because they give me a little piece of paper, right, a fake note, that doesn't mean that I actually know the people that are making it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I needed to be able to prove it. I can't take pictures. I can't record. It's very complicated, right? So I was able to, I came up with the idea. Plan A was that if I could get them to give me a sheet, I need to be careful here, of the it's actually, money is usually made on a fabric. It's actually not paper. So if they could give me a sheet. Why a sheet? Because normal people would not have access to that sheet because it's very special.
Yeah.
Again, it's
paper.
It's fabric. It's a high, well. So and I was lucky, and they did provide that for us. Now, what would happen in a case where maybe we couldn't prove this? Right? True scenario. In a non-friendly country, they sent in some additional people to have a second look, and they destroyed the facility, blew it up.
Wow.
Extrajudicial movement, and this is years ago. And by the way, this kind of stuff goes on all the time. You don't hear it in the news and the media, but it does. If there's national security involved, and governments, by the way, they really hate it when you print their money. They really don't like that very much. They can get pretty nasty about it, especially if you're doing it in quantities. People doing it with a little color printer in the garage, they don't need to worry about too much. I'm talking about the professional guys that are really making A quality stuff.
Absolutely. Great response. Great example. Thank you. Don, moving on, what differentiates leaders who perform well in high stakes conversations from those who unravel?
Stress management, emotional intelligence, and the key, even the basis, the foundation of that is self-awareness. It's a very good question, by the way, because if you don't kind of have your own act together for real, and you get into a situation that gets you off balance, well, what's going to happen? Your present, everything's going to kind of fall apart because it's all a facade, it's a show.
Yeah.
But if you yourself internally are actually a balanced person, it's very hard. You don't get shaken easily because you kind of have everything in perspective. You realize, okay, well, tomorrow's another day, and everybody puts on their shoe, one shoe at a time. And people, I don't know, this happens a lot with meeting or working with nowadays, like really high profile individuals, prime minister's offices.
Right?
And people think, well, don't you get nervous? I think, the truth of the matter is this individual, just like me, has to eat. I don't want to be crude, but it has to go to the toilet, is going to die one day, get sick. So what's really the difference? He or she, they have a title. How nice. And maybe they have in their academic studies, they've done very well, or not, by the way. Just because somebody has a high political office does not mean that they're
correct.
Academically gifted.
Correct.
But
well said. Well said. You're very clearly a very good storyteller as well, in addition to everything you said about being able to read people. My next question, Don, is what role does silence play in a high-pressure communication environment?
It's power. Absolute power. And why is it power? Because when you're silent, well, it sends multiple different kinds of signals. If I pause, you say something, and then I pause, well, it could mean I'm thinking about how to respond. So that's a good thing. And it shows that I'm listening to what you're saying. It could be a power pause where I'm trying to give some sort of impact. It could be, I don't agree. I might want to make you nervous. So it depends on what the context of the communication we're having. But silence is ultimately powerful. It really, really is.
Yeah. And do you have an interesting story to share on how silence can be power?
Multiple. let's take a simple, hold on. A simple context is what's coming to mind. I'm trying to think of more of in the corporate environment.
Yeah.
Which would be better. Well, here's another one. Having lunch, dinner. This is a good one. Minister of Housing for a EU country. Big job. This person has, right?
Yeah.
He or she, right? And we're having lunch together. There's about 15 of us. I have a member of the European Parliament sitting over here and a gentleman sitting over here. And he quizzed the minister, this gentleman, why are entry-level homes so expensive in Europe, where that people that earn a decent salary can't afford to buy an entry-level home anymore? Now, the reason is actually not so simple, but it's not. The reason is because permits and new building licenses is very complicated to get. That's one of the main factors. So supply and demand. And there's other factors, but that's probably what the main. And the minister, she just ignored the question. So then the member of the European Parliament asked the same question again, right? And her answer was, well, it's many factors and it's a very complicated topic. The member of the European Parliament just kept staring at her, didn't say a word more. But basically what she was, the way I interpret it was just looking at saying you're full of baloney. Yeah.
Amazing.
But that's an example, I guess kind of a high stakes lunch.
Yeah. Fascinating. What mistakes do leaders make when they try too hard to control the room?
That's a mistake. Because then that's the thing is, I need to be the center of attention. For me to be a good leader, I need to be at the center. And I think that there's a lot of ego involved in that. And as a leader, you're more like a facilitator. You have an orchestra and you have the conductor, right? So I've got this person who's really good at doing this. I have these 3 people really good at doing that. Let them do their thing. Let them share their ideas. I don't need to. Why would I want to be the center of attention? Let my talent come up with the solutions and the ideas and all this kind of thing. Put myself in the second place. I'm just facilitating. I mean, at least that's the way I look at it.
Yeah. Great response. How should leaders communicate uncertainty without appearing weak?
How can leaders appear certain without looking weak?
No. How can leaders communicate uncertainty without appearing weak?
Well, nobody has the answer to everything.
Correct.
I mean, even if you're the CEO of the largest pharmaceutical in the world, I mean, who's got the answer to everything? President of you don't have the answer to everything. It's just not possible. It's not right. So sometimes, I mean, if you all the time you don't have an answer, that's a problem, right? But sometimes it actually makes you look more genuine, more real, more honest, more likable. In fact, when you don't have an answer, you admit, I need to look more into that because I can't give you a good answer. And on top of it, it comes across like I respect you. So I'm not gonna try to impress you. I'd say, the truth of the matter, Ashutosh, is I don't really know at this moment, or I don't have all the data to give you a good answer. But let me get back, I'll study the matter, and then I'll get back to you with the proper response.
Absolutely. I agree with you completely. I have time for 3 more questions for you. How does communication quality influence decision quality for leaders at the top?
Okay. Decision quality and communication quality. Well, one is, I'm going to go backwards on this. How I communicate my decision is very important, how people receive it. And we could go into feedback and all that kind of thing. So delivering feedback in a way that I inspire people, you motivate people, you don't hurt people's feelings, you don't want to demotivate them. So that's very important. That's one thing. And making a decision, I would always bring in a team of people. If it's a difficult decision, well, not always, that's not right. But you might bring in a team. You might consider bringing in a team, depending what kind of decision, what area it is. Again, if you're the CEO and you don't have a strong technical background, you might want to bring in your CTO and your technical people to help you with that, right? So that would include communication and let them come up with different solutions and maybe workarounds for whatever that important decision might be. And then how you communicate that decision to the team, to the organization, and making sure that the message is always the same. That's really important. Because if you start with one message and then you change, you've probably played that game, right? Where you have people standing in a circle and you say something the person
Chinese
next to you
whispers,
And by the time it gets around, it's something completely different.
Correct.
In an organization, the same thing can happen. So it's really important to be real repetitive and make sure that you have people all the way down the chain of command repeating the same message. And even then, it's going to get slightly distorted. Absolutely. But the idea is minimize.
Very well said. Absolutely right. What habits separate leaders who stabilize teams under pressure from those who create anxiety?
Say one more time. It sounds like a great
What
question.
habits separate leaders who stabilize teams under pressure from those who create anxiety in their teams?
Well, one thing that you'll see, like I'm going to say a toxic boss or toxic leaders, they'll start gossiping about other people, trying to create like little tribes within the team, favoritism, all that kind of stuff creates really a toxic environment, especially like talking bad about people. So I think trying to pull everybody together to work together, and maybe some people are a bit stronger in certain areas and others have better talents in others and all that, and recognizing that. But I think it's really important to always try to recognize people and make them feel important. Money is important in a job. Obviously, people work for money.
Yeah.
But also recognition and feeling like a valued human being and being respected for the work and the efforts that you're doing is a critical component. So I think as a manager, as a leader, I need to keep myself out of it, be able to keep my composure, no matter, maybe have a lot of other things going on, a lot of other stress things. So a lot of it then against that self-awareness and be able to take things in measure of what's going on. I don't know if
No, you've given some interesting
samadhi. They call it samadhi, I think. No, that's in Buddhism. Sorry. But in Hindu, they have the same idea that you're kind of like connected to a level of unified field where you're always at a level of, there's a certain foundation there that no matter what happens around you, you're always able to tap into. That's what I'm trying to say. And it's a skill you have to develop. I mean, it's not, most people aren't born with it. It's something you go developing as you get older. And I think it's really critical for effective leaders to be able to have that ability to be able to maintain their composure, but being real, not just looking at everybody and say, oh yeah, everything's going to be fine. And inside like,
Yes, absolutely. And my last question for you, Don. What is one subtle communication shift that produces an outsized improvement in team response?
One shift in communication that improves a response from your team. Is that right?
A subtle communication.
Subtle. Well, we talk nonverbal communication, though.
Yeah.
You talk body language. I mean, having open gestures, it's just sitting there in a meeting with your arms crossed the whole time. I mean, that's not going to give a nice thing. Smiling is pretty amazing. Huh? Smiling.
Yeah.
Monday morning smiling. It's amazing. When I'm working in Brussels and I go into the different room early morning on Monday morning, right? And I make sure I listen to comedy 7 in the morning, 7:30 in the morning. So I'm like in a good mood, kind of laughing. So I'm coming in smiling, looking like happy and all that. And it's amazing because it fills the room.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the people, it just, rather than having the Monday morning gloom where everybody's like, oh, it's Monday, I'm gonna be here,
Yeah.
That doesn't make a fun environment.
I agree. And on that note, and your amazing last comment of, how a smile on a Monday morning can be such a powerful communicator, rather than come grumpy faced and say, where's my cup of black coffee? Thank you so much, Don, for speaking to me about your amazing journey. Thank you for speaking to me about so many little nuances of communication that leaders need to adopt to be able to become effective in their own journey as leaders. You brought up some very fascinating points. And as you were speaking, I was able to relate to them through my own journey. But these pointers will be amazing for my very large number of young viewers and listeners. Thank you for speaking to me, and good luck to you.
Thank you so much for having me on, Ashutosh.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website, www.tbcy.in, to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.